also are pulling questions that were sent ahead of time. And a hot topic is for sure cultural appropriation. Here in the Q&A, we have someone asking, could someone please speak about the dynamics of power that are at play with respect to cultural appropriation?
I can say something really quickly. I've had a couple folks who have asked me about spirituals, white choirs doing spirituals, and we've seen some talks a couple national ACDA conferences ago. There was a chat on that, and there were some great things that were discussed there. I know that there are some we have great students who want to make sure that everybody is represented, everyone is treated fairly. And so when you have a predominantly white choir and they're told that they're gonna do a spiritual and there's gonna be dialect, they automatically say, oh my God, we can't do that because that's not our music, and all these kinds of, I'm just like, whoa, let's take a step back. I'm glad that you want to do things right, but let's think about the history. And a lot of times we in our attempts to stay very current and relevant, we forget about the past. And so from what I've learned, the earliest spiritual arrangement that was published as an octavo was Harry T. Burley's Deep River from 1913. And from that arrangement on, and I've looked at quite a few, I did not see any of them that had an asterisk or a footnote or something on the cover that said this music is only to be performed by Black people. And so first it's just saying this music was published to be made available to everyone. And honestly, most of the people who were doing it when it got published were white people. And there was nothing wrong with it. And I mean, even thinking about William Grant Still's And They Lynched Him on a Tree, he even said in an interview, like, if you can't find enough Black people to do it, now I'm not suggesting this is just what William Grant Still said. He did say if you don't have enough enough Black people to do it, there is charcoal. And I was like, well, okay, we're not gonna put charcoal in anybody's faces. But thinking about that, I mean, the text was not written by a Black person. And so, I mean, there are so many things that we'd have to explain so much to our students, letting them know that it is about honoring. And it is also important for us to educate our audiences. Because if all you do is just do the music, then they're not gonna have any context. So explain why, whether it's in program notes, a pre-concert talk. I think that's best while you have everybody's attention to just spend a minute or two talking about it. And so is it a little difficult? It can be, but just like we're having conversations about everything else, have a conversation about it and explain your intentions about honoring people and how this music is great and should be performed by all.
You are so right. And I personally have struggled with this because it's hard. I don't know how to have the conversation a lot of the time. It makes me feel uncomfortable, but this is a call to, move beyond that and to have dialogue and to learn and to move forward. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Garrett. Absolutely. I see someone else wanted to chime in.
There is a wonderful book called Cultural Appropriation in the Arts by James Young. I think it's about 150 pages. It's a pretty thick book, copyright about 2008. And he talks about cultural appropriation. He defines it and helps us all to understand that cultural appropriation is inevitable and it is ubiquitous. We all do it because we're all influenced by many, many cultures in terms of what we say, in terms of what we do, in terms of how we dress, in terms of how we speak, in terms of the kind of food that we consume, etc. What he helps us to understand is that cultural appropriation in itself may not necessarily be a bad thing. He helps us to look at cultural appropriation as assault, as theft, and as profound offense. And he outlines the conditions by which you can look at your own work to understand if what you are engaging in is, as Dr. Garrett says, is something that's very respectful and that is something that comes from an honest place versus something that's coming from a place of dishonesty or insincerity. So I hope that that resource will be helpful to you, but you absolutely, everyone has a right. The moment a piece of music is put in print, really, and it is designed for distribution to the masses. It does not you know, as Marques, as Dr. Garrett said, the music is not marked for Black people only, or for Latinx people only, or for Indigenous people only. The music is meant to be shared. It's a matter of us as choral directors to muster up the courage and the respect, and in some cases, the resources, if we need them, in order for us to perform the music with as much cultural validity and authenticity as we possibly can.
Beautiful. And Dr. Dower, you had some thoughts about this as well and experience?
Yeah, just really quickly, with regard to the spiritual specifically, I've been in rooms or choir rehearsals where a non-Black conductor will switch all the words out, change yo to your, and things of that nature. And I would caution against that. We should generally give dialect the same respect we give a foreign language. So keep it as is, that's how it's supposed to be performed, and just shift you rather than making the words fit into something else. That was all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Let's see, we have so many questions, so little time, and we of course want this conversation to continue beyond today. So as we move toward, you know, what can NCCO do? I first want to make sure that we do talk about advocacy and accountability. How do we stay in this work together? Who would like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk a little bit about that. I think it goes back a little bit to what I mentioned about, I know that in higher ed, especially people of color, women too, we get called upon to serve on a lot of committees because oftentimes we are that one. And they think they're diversifying it if we do them all. And so then our plate gets heavy, and then some of the things that maybe we want to do, we don't get asked to do because it doesn't meet their need. We don't meet that need. They got, oh, well, that's not an issue. So we only get called for the diversity inclusion things. And so I think one of the ways we can advocate is to, I politic. I play the game. You know, some people say, no, we didn't play the game. Well, then take the results. You get the score you get. So if there is something that I am passionate about at this university, and I see that there's an opportunity to be in the room where I can help shape a policy or give a different perspective, then I'm going to go and I'm going to get on that committee as best I can. And I will do that by going to my colleagues and saying, listen, I'm real interested in this. Would you help me try and figure out how we can do this to get me? And I've always been, oh, sure, absolutely. And they do that. So that's the advocacy thing. And I'm going to jump just a little bit to a question, which is sort of in the same realm. There's someone asked a question about auditions and being inclusive and things like that. I just want to say that's another thing too, is to have these discussions with your area. You know, every situation is unique. Having those conversations with your area and the people in your area and talking to them about why you think a policy might may not be as fair as they think it is. And I've had many conversations in the 9 years that I've been here, and we've slowly changed policies about admissions into the Department of Music, and it has really surprised some people on the faculty that some of the people that we let in ended up as juniors and seniors being remarkable students because they were given the opportunity. They weren't given anything except the opportunity to come in, and they were told, okay, this is what you have to do, and they went about doing it. So I'll just say advocacy, you have to be willing to go into the room, and you have to be willing to speak plainly and be honest, and if it hurts You know, if it hurts to say it, then it probably hurts them to hear it, and that's probably okay. And but because no one died from a statement, so it's okay to be uncomfortable. And the older I get, the more I am okay with making people a little uncomfortable. And that's a way to advocate, because they recognize passion in what you say, and sometimes the needle moves slowly, but I think, you know, a lot of times you will find that it rolls a lot more when you show that you are passionate about this situation, whatever the policy is that you want to change, whatever you're advocating for.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like our work with policy is considered service work, which is, of course, less valued than the creative and teaching. So that's a whole other conversation. That can we have that? You know, yes.
You're right. It is, and I'm never, you know, I have a bad attitude when it comes to jobs. You know, I remember teaching my first high school job, saying to the kids, "I will go work at McDonald's."
Mm.
But y'all gonna do what I say in here today. You know, I just had this kind of idea that, you know, and it never came down to that. You know, it was kind of a joke, and they saw the joke, but, you know, but they also understood some honesty behind that. So I have been through the tenure process at 2 different universities. And so I knew I was doing the work as by the document laid down. So I just said, okay, I'm gonna let the body of work speak for me, but I'm going to speak for the students, and I'm going to speak for the injustice in the policy. I'm not going to sort of, you know, not do it because we're stretched thin. I'm going to give my passion to those things. So it's a hard thing to do, and
It's the right thing to do, though.
it is the right thing to do. And if it were easy, there'd be a lot more of us doing it.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. So, are there any final thoughts about this particular? I'm sure there are. Looking at the time, and I want to make sure that each panelist has a chance to summarize and wrap up.